Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our session today on Totango's reports. If you haven't seen the recent enhancements, they have been revised and improved. Much faster UI, prettier, easier to navigate, easier to manage setting up reports. So we'll actually talk about some cool ways to visualize your progress with reports today. I'm Cecilia Tevel, for those of you that haven't met me before. I've been with Totango for almost 4 years. I really enjoy working with all of you collaboratively and sharing best practices. If you have any specific questions or if you have anything you'd like to send directly to me after the session, you can just email me at cecilia@totango.com and I'll be happy to stay in touch. Also, just before we dive in, I wanted to highlight this. I'm sure you're all aware that we have our summit coming up at the end of February. We are selling out. We would love to see as many of you there as possible. We will have a specific customer-only track. So there's going to be great learnings, great best practices sessions, ways to collaborate and communicate and network with your fellow customers. So we would love to see you there. If there's anything we can do to help bring your team to this event, please let us know. Reach out to your CSM or to me, and we'll see how we can help you out. It is going to be 2 days fully packed, lots of great learnings, as I mentioned, and would be great to meet all of you face to face since some of you are not nearby. These are kind of our opportunities to get together and really put the personal connection on all of that. So let me know how we can help. So with that, for today's agenda on reports, we'll discuss some ideas for meaningful reports that you can, include in your business. So it's going to be specific to your needs, but I'll highlight some examples or some ideas to just get you started in that process. We'll talk about defining the right segments as building blocks. For those of you that have never created a report, segments are the key components. So segments in the segment section of Totango is a place where you actually need to build your logic first, and then you can build your reports from there. And then we'll talk about the actual report building process as part of the session. If you have any questions, and I know this is a quick webinar, it's only half an hour, so we won't have enough time for all of the kind of the cool things we can be building. This is supposed to be just kind of an introduction for you to get an idea of where you can go with this. If you will have specific questions, you can type them into the question box and we will take as many questions as we have time for. So with that, if we start thinking about what are the meaningful reports, again, this is going to be specific to your business needs and things that are important to your business, your KPIs. But at the start, some of the initial ideas for you to consider is going to be, starting with health. So what is our health report? What does health look like across our customer base? Who do we have in green, yellow, and red? And how's that trending? Then onboarding tracking. If you have an onboarding process, how are you tracking that? How are you visualizing progress there? So if you are leveraging Totango or some of the kind of your process in Totango, there's a way for you to build some visualization there. Again, it's going to be specific to your business and specific to the data that you're tracking in the onboarding process. But if we are tracking some of it in Totango, there's probably a cool way to start building something visual for you to refer to. Product adoption. So that's a unique one too. There's different ways to tackle that one. It depends on, how your customers purchase your product and what do they purchase it for. In certain cases, identifying what are the specific use cases that your customers have purchased you for, and then kind of defining the logic. What does it mean if a customer is using you for project, management? Does it mean that they have to create projects, assign resources to the project, and how do you fulfill that use case? So, obviously Totango tracks the usage part, so we can easily come up with the specific buckets of what it does mean for you and your customers to fulfill a use case. So that can be one example of that. And then it can be as simple as feature adoption. Like, are they using reports in your product? Are they building custom dashboards? Are they installing something specific? Are they downloading documents or creating documents? It depends on what your product does. But it can also be specific by feature. So that can be all in the product adoption scenario. Then upsells and renewals. If your team is responsible for the upsell and renewals, how can we track that? How can we visualize some of the, maybe some of the opportunities that we have? How many do we have? How many customers do we have coming up for renewal? How many customers do we have that have some sort of upsell potential, and then start to visualize the trends there. Support volume. We have recently, or not so recently anymore, have enabled an integration with Zendesk. If that is your ticketing system, that's an easy way to get integrated and start sending to Totango kind of the ticket information. So then we can visualize something regarding ticket volume, or maybe we're only interested in seeing, the volume of high priority tickets. So that's something that can be visualized as well. Forecasting report. So we do have the revenue center there. If you are leveraging us for that financial aspect, that's awesome. If you do have questions or are interested in learning more about it, do reach out to us. But, I was thinking, I'll show you actually a forecasting type of report to visualize the buckets of forecasting. So who do we have coming up, that may be like a renewal, maybe an upsell, and then unfortunately, sometimes we have churn. So how many do we have that are forecasted to churn? And then subscription reports, something that's very basic, high level, just simply the distribution of customers by their account type, or what kind of package have they purchased from you, so that you can see, what is the distribution between the different customer types. And then team activity tracker. So we have success flows. For those of you that are not familiar, success flows are a way for you to categorize your activity with your customers. So are you having a training conversation with them? Are you having an executive conversation with them? Is it a QBR that you're performing? And then kind of visualizing that into Totango by the specific category of activities. And reports can be very creative. So these are just some ideas. There's a ton more that you can do with it. It just depends on what is interesting for you and your business. And then how do we kind of build the right logic within the segmentation capabilities to build the right buckets as your building blocks for reports. So, as we talk about the segments, I suggest that if you don't already have folders in your segments area, create folders so that you can keep yourself organized. And then obviously create the segment logic first, and then start building the reports. So just a few little ideas and visual screenshots here of some reports that have been built in the past. And those are just some for you to consider as you start to think about what you want to build. This is a sample adoption report. And as I mentioned, you can do it by use cases, or you can figure out what is the kind of the buckets that you want to define in the system. And we have a few buckets here. So basically EWS +2. So that means if they're using us for some sort of baseline capabilities, plus 2 other use cases. And then the next one to it is +1. And then just the baseline functionality. And then engaged customers versus dead customers. Customers are just really not engaged with us. So this is just what you'll see. So you'll have some trend lines. You'll see how many you have. And then the default trend is 30 days, but you can expand it to other custom dates. Then the forecast tracker. So this is just a simple visualization of customers that are coming up for, in the next 30 or 90 days, actually, 90-day tracker, and they're forecasted to churn. So we have 7, then we have 21 forecasted to renew, and then we have 0 upsells in this particular time frame. And then you have the scope, so you can define what date range you're looking at. That's just quick ideas to see how you're trending with your forecasting and what you have set up as a forecasting to come up in the next 90 days. And then this is a slightly outdated UI, but I wanted to present this to you just to give you some ideas as to what you can do with the onboarding milestones. We can essentially have the specific milestones that your customers achieve in their onboarding, and those would be your segments. So in this particular process, there's a kickoff call, there's a requirements approved process, then there's integration, then there's a data audit verification stage, then the data goes live, and then there's configuration and training. So you can see how many customers you have in each particular bucket, and then you can identify potential bottlenecks. Like, looks like we have quite a few customers that haven't kicked off yet, so that's a problem. And then looks like we get stuck in configuration. Maybe that's a lengthy or time-consuming process for our team. How can we alleviate that? How can we make that better? So it allows you, with the visualization, allows you to identify problem areas and places where you need to maybe reallocate resources or maybe restructure some processes and refine what you're doing. And this is another one for product adoption. As I mentioned, the specific categories and buckets or use cases. In this particular case, we have specific, feature type of buckets. So we have using EWS, using success plays, using tasks. And what is the definition for using tasks or using some particular area of your product? That's up to your team to define. Does a customer need to be creating tasks every day, every week, every 2 weeks? It really depends. And so those time frames and thresholds are up for you to define by coming up with the kind of the high level categories to either fulfill a specific product use case or simply identify whether they're using a feature or not. This can be something you can do in segmentation and then build the reports from it. So with that, I'm going to skip out of this and actually go into a live demo and highlight some of the examples. So I have my webinar folder. This is where I organize myself, and I would recommend, if you start building reports, defining a folder for reports and then organizing it from there, depending on what kind of report you're building. So it's easier for you to find the information later. So I have a folder with my top reports, and these are some segments that I've built. So the ones that I defined, I have a couple of different scenarios here. So let's start with onboarding, for example. So if I click on my onboarding all, I'm simply looking at all my customers that are in onboarding. So I'm just defining that as an overarching bucket. And from here, let me show you some other ones. And then the ones that I already showed you a visual for, I have a forecasting tracker in the next 90 days. And I have it broken down by the upsell, renewal, and churn. So if we look at the specific upsell one, I'm going to click on that one. I don't have any data in there for some reason at this point. So let me do the renewal. So in the renewal one, I have the customer coming up for renewal in the next 90 days. And I have the forecast state is one of renewal. So let me go into the editor so I can show you where I grabbed this. So the first part is obviously to focus on my paying customer. So my status type is paying. My contract renewal date is in the next 90 days. And if you're ever stuck or you don't know where to find the data that you're looking for, start typing in the search box and just put in some keywords. And then it'll actually pull up the attribute for you. So I'm simply typing in renew. And then I have a few things I can, select. So I can do the contract renewal date, and I selected it. I have it in the next 90 days. And then my forecast state, I have this one. So I have my forecast state, and I simply grab that one, and I can just select what I'm looking for. I like to use the is one of because it gives me all the options that I can leverage. And then this is where I select my renewal state, and that's what I did for this particular segment. So I'm looking at my renewals. I apply, and this is where my segment gets built. I already have an information pull up here. I have the kind of the snapshot of the health for that segment, and I can see that I have 21 accounts forecasted to renew in the next 90 days. So I've built my segment. I built my building block for my forecasting report. The other interesting idea too, and I have this one, I haven't created a report from it, but I have a reference tracker. So for us in customer success, it's important to keep our customers happy. And we also do help out our sales team when they ask for references. So tracking that somewhere becomes crucial because we want to know first, who are the customers that have told us they are okay with being a reference? And how do we track that? Of course, we want to grow our customer base of referenceable customers. And maybe that's part of the goals for the CSM team to get that number to grow. And then if we start visualizing it and tracking it, that becomes more fun because we can see how we're doing and how we're trending. Are we growing a referenceable customer base or not? So in this particular case, we have an attribute that's called reference, and then we have a couple of options, one yes and the other no. And right now we have 60 accounts out of our revenue, out of our whole customer base in this demo account that are committed to being a reference for us. So that's great. So that's one other idea. The one also that I mentioned is support. So support, either you integrated with a support ticketing like Zendesk and we get that information automatically. Even if we do not, If there's a way, or if there's some interest in getting that information into Totango, there's other ways to do that. But in this case, what I'm focusing on here is my customers that have at least one or more unsolved top priority tickets, which is important because if we have, a few customers with top priority tickets that are unsolved, we want to kind of keep our pulse on that. So I'm going to visualize that in the report in a second. And then let's see what other one we can quickly touch on. So if I look at my key account tracker, so if I simply want to know how many key accounts I have versus my, other types of accounts. So for example, if you have also low touch and high touch engagement approach with customers, and, higher tier, lower tier customers, or maybe SMB versus enterprise, it's nice to see the trends and tracking for that as well. So it's as simple as kind of building your bucket, defining it to be a key account or whatever other account type you have, and then building those key components, building blocks, and then building reports from them. So segments first. Make sure you build out your logic, define your buckets, and then we can go into the reports. And this is where we will actually build out our reports. So I already have a few prepared, and I have the support high volume ticket tracker. We just saw a segment for that. And let's see what that looks like for us. It's just looking at that one segment of high priority tickets. We are looking at the trend in the last 90 days, so we can see how we're doing. So if we go into this time frame, looks like on January 4th, we had quite a few high priority tickets, or high priority accounts that had tickets open. So we have 14, which is quite a bit. And then we can kind of review the trend line and see how we fluctuated. So it gives you a good idea of ticket volume. Maybe something was going on that day. It gives you a kind of insight. Now we can also break down our reports by any data point that is in Totango. So I'm breaking it down by my success manager because I want to see how many are coming in for each CSM. Looks like, Kostin here has quite a few customers, or 4, which is more than anyone else that have high priority unsolved tickets. So maybe he needs a little bit of help in getting, the support resources. And then by account type, what kinds of accounts are we having or facing issues with on high priority tickets. So that's one example of a report. Let me show you one or two more, and then we'll build one as well. So account by type tracker. This is where we were simply visualizing to see the trends of customers that we have in each bucket. So we have this many key accounts, and we have this many commercial accounts. We can also kind of define our trends for that and look at maybe the last 90 days. How do we fluctuate in that? Do we what are our goals for our team? Do we have some goal to maybe transition some commercial accounts to key accounts, grow them to that point and get them over to the side? Is our overall customer portfolio growing? Things like that. So you can monitor kind of the performance there. And then also, let me go down to the components. You can break it down. Again, what I like to break it down by is obviously the success manager. That's an easy one to consider. Contract value, and then health rank in certain cases. So I can actually see in my green accounts, I have 24 key accounts that are green, 23 commercial that are green. Then when I have average health, I have 16 commercial accounts that are in average health and 22 that are key accounts in average health. And then red, I have 8 accounts that are my key accounts in red and 22 in commercial. So it gives you kind of a way to look at that data, and then you can even click on this data to see who are the customers that are in poor health out of my key accounts. So you can actually click in as well. Let's take a look at another quick report. Okay, let's look at the upcoming renewals in the next 90 days. So we have 29 accounts coming up for renewals in the next 90 days. We can see how that trends as well. And we can look at the distribution by customer success manager, who has kind of a lot of stuff coming up for renewal. Maybe they need a little bit of help. Also broken down by health. So I think the one to really focus on is the ones that are in red. They're coming up for renewal in the next 90 days, and they are in poor health. So we need to focus there and get our team to do something so that the customer renews without a problem. And then we can also look at it by contract value. And now if we wanted to, well, let's build one report from the reference tracker that we have seen a segment from. So to build a report, we simply click on create. And now with the new UI, you can actually look for your segment by typing kind of the name of the segment. So there's this one. So reference tracker, that's the one that I built. It already gives you a preview and the definition of what that segment's logic is. So you can easily view and make sure that you grab the right one. You can update the color. So I'm going to make it the green and I'll select OK. So maybe that wasn't the right one. I'm sorry. Let me select it, or maybe my data, something wrong in the data count. So let's just grab this one. Hopefully we'll get something to show up there. All right, so let's grab this one and we'll remove this one. Okay, so this is my segment for referenceable accounts. This is my trend line. I can see how many I have. Looks like, you know, we're improving here. If we look back in January 15th, we had 42 and now we're at 53. So that's good progress for us. We grew our referenceable customer base quite a bit just in the last few days. So that's good news. And then we can break it down. So I'm going to select my components. I'm going to use this breakdown. I'm going to type in Success Manager, and that will automatically populate my title for me. I can also change the name of the title if I want to. I'll click on OK. And looks like, and then I can see by account or CSM how many referenceable customers we have for each. I'm going to also do this by contract value, because sometimes if there's a reference need, it has to be of a certain type of customer, certain contract size. So I'm going to select contract value, and I'm going to do the distribution as descending, and I'll select my interval as 1,000 and click on OK. And now I can see by contract value. So I have in my highest bucket, I have 4 accounts, and then actually I have higher buckets here. There's actually someone in the 54,000 range, so that's good news. I have plenty of referenceable customers to select from. I'm going to give my webinar or my report a name. I'm going to call it webinar, and then I'll just call it references tracker, and then I'll save it. Now the other thing you can do here is there's a filtering capability. So if I go into the filter, I can actually refine this and you know, add filters to this. So if I wanted to just filter right away by my Success Manager, I can do that. So I can just say I want to see all of, let's say, Ron's referenceable trends. So I can just simply click on him and I'll apply, and now I can just see his view. So now I'm just only looking at Ron. And this is a great thing about filters, because you can really focus in on any data that is important for you and then zero in on just that particular CSM or something else of value. So I can clear this filter and I can look for something else. You know, I'm looking for referenceable customers, and I also want to know that they're really heavily using some specific area of our product. So I'm gonna maybe look at my modules. Maybe I want them to be using documents a lot, because, you know, the customer that I want to use for a reference for a prospect, you know, has heavy interest in documents and really has specific questions on that. So I'm gonna look for that. I'm gonna refine my filter by that. And I'm gonna say more than, let's say, 10 times in the last 14 days. So we'll see if we have anyone there. Oh, looks like all of them meet that criteria. So that's good. I can continue refining this filter to make sure that I get the right scope of what I'm looking for. So that's another great way for you to leverage reports is the cool filtering capabilities to allow you to zero in on things that are of value. There's also date ranges. So we looked at the last 30 days right now. We can change that to 90 days. We've done that with other reports. And then there's also other things you can do with the dates. You can do current quarter, current year, custom range. And then you can change the distribution from a numeric to percentage. So it doesn't really look great with this type of report. but you do have the percentage distribution capability as well if you wanted to add to that. So with this, I'm going to pause for a second. We're approaching close to the end of the webinar. I wanted to see if anybody has any questions, and then we can take them. So great question. So customers asking, what are the differences between the old reports that we had and the new version? So that's a great question. So the UI has completely been refreshed. So the old UI wasn't, this pretty. There's just a refresh to match the rest of the product. We have updated kind of the UI refresh quite a while back on a few of the other components in Totango, but we haven't gotten to the report section. So this allows, the UI to be consistent with everything else in Totango. So that's one. The filtering capability has also been improved a bit, because there's a lot more easy to grab, searches that are at your fingertips, and a lot more capabilities to filter by. I hope that answers your question. Let's see if there's anything else. All right, so someone had a question, wanted us to go back to one of the reports that I